If you've ever heard someone say, but what about black on black crime? We've got you covered. Scrolling through your Facebook feed, you'll probably see articles and arguments about Black Lives Matter.
You mean articles like these? Black Lives Matter activists angry dead white people in France stealing their limelight. White people to the back. Black Lives Matter segregates media by race. Veterans brutally attacked by Black Lives Matter, says Army Staff Sergeant.
A lot of people are mad or just confused about this movement.
I'm going to stop you right there, Francesca. Mad does not even describe how I feel about Black Lives Matter. Look at this. Protesters bring London streets to a standstill in Black Lives Matter protest. But what they don't tell you is how they went in and pillaged a McDonald's afterwards. Or when BLM protesters ransacked a French village and attempted to burn it to the ground. Protesters injured 21 police officers in St. Paul. One of the cops had a cinder block dropped on his head, separating his spine. Black Lives Matter has repeatedly blocked ambulances, endangering people's lives, and the constant call for the deaths of police officers.
Oh, so you care about Black lives? Then why aren't you talking about black on black crime?
Because that wouldn't fit the narrative now, would it?
First off, this assumes that the black community isn't worried about gun violence,
No, it doesn't. It just means you rarely talk about black on black crime.
which isn't true. For example, Ceasefire in Chicago is an organization that actually intervenes in local street and gang fights. There's even a documentary about them called The Interrupters.
I'm sure they do a lot of great work, but that isn't what we're talking about. You are conflating Black Lives Matter with the black community. They are not the same thing.
Black Lives Matter isn't just about the loss of life, which is always terrible. It's about the lack of consequences when black lives are taken at the hands of the police.
Why is it just black lives? Why not anybody's life?
When a civilian has committed a violent crime, they're generally arrested, tried, and then convicted. Conversely, there's a lot of evidence that it's very rare to secure an indictment against a police officer for excessive force.
That may very well be true, but where is the evidence that they should be convicted? And again, why is it just black lives?
And an indictment is just a trial. It's not even a conviction.
Congrats, you know what words mean.
Also, black on black crime isn't a thing.
Yes, it is.
84% of white murder victims were killed by another white person, but we don't call it white on white crime.
You're lying through your teeth, Francesca. Look at this. Blacks make up about half of all victims and offenders of homicides, while they are just 13% of the population.
That's because our communities are still very segregated. So if you have the misfortune of being the victim of a crime, the perpetrator will most likely look like you.
While you're correct that you're most likely to be killed by your own race, it doesn't mean that blacks aren't disproportionately killing each other.
So why do people always bring up black on black crime? Because it's a diversion.
And we can't have people diverting from the accepted narrative.
They're trying to prove black citizens don't have the right to be outraged about police violence because their communities have a crime problem.
No, that's not right. It's saying that Black Lives Matter does not care about crime in the black community. Once again, Francesca, you are conflating the black community with Black Lives Matter. They are not the same thing. You are being incredibly disingenuous by saying that they are.
But the truth is, black people are not more violent or more likely to commit crimes than anyone else.
That is blatantly false. Like I said earlier, blacks commit about half of all homicides in the country. That is despite them being only 13% of the population.
The reality is, because of a history of institutional racism, black communities have higher poverty rates, suffer from poorly funded schools, and are more likely to be targeted by police.
No, Francesca. Studies have shown that adjusted for rates of violent crime, blacks are not disproportionately targeted by police. Links for all of this will be in the description.
Are you saying blue lives don't matter? Of course the lives of cops matter. That's why if you kill a police officer, you are rightly arrested and prosecuted. But saying blue lives matter effectively lumps a profession into the same category as a marginalized group of people.
Are blacks truly a marginalized people in today's America?
Becoming a police officer is an occupation. It's a choice. It's not something you're born into. And most importantly, advocating for citizens is not anti-cop. The job of police officers is to protect and serve all communities. If that's not happening, we need to reassess and find a solution. So you're saying only Black Lives Matter? That's racist. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, before, when you said that black people cannot be racist because they're not white.
But this movement is not saying Black Lives Matter more than anyone else's.
I don't know, but saying white people to the back makes it seem like they aren't as important.
Saying Black lives should matter, but the way that our justice system, our media, and our police have been operating suggests that they do not.
Like I said, blacks are not disproportionately targeted by police when adjusted for rates of violent crime.
It's totally okay for a movement to focus on issues specific to one marginalized group.
Your video on white pride says otherwise, and I doubt you would be very accepting of a men's rights organization.
Gay bars aren't unfair to straight people. A breast cancer walk isn't unfair to other forms of cancer.
If breast cancer groups started calling for the deaths of doctors and saying that they were more important than other cancer victims, then we would have a problem.
And Save the Rainforest isn't saying you hate all other trees. To quote one law professor's letter, the subtext of Black Lives Matter is, because of the brutalizing and killing of black people at the hands of the police and the indifference of society in general and the criminal justice system in particular, it is important that we say Black Lives Matter.
Again, black people are not disproportionately targeted by police when adjusted for rates of violent crime and when adjusted for rates of violent confrontations with police officers.
What about the white victims of police violence? There's way more of them. Yes, there are more white people killed by police officers than black people. But when you look proportionately within the populations, black Americans are 2.5 times as likely as white Americans to be shot and killed by police officers.
Black people also commit half of all violent crimes.
Black men make up just 6% of the nation's population, but of all the unarmed people shot and killed by police in 2015, 40% of them were black men.
And that corresponds to their percentage of violent crime.
Those numbers are tragic. If an unarmed citizen is killed by the police, or an armed citizen is killed under suspicious circumstances, people should be upset no matter what the victim's race.
Yes, death is tragic, but just because you're unarmed doesn't mean you're not dangerous. Michael Brown was unarmed, but he attempted to grab the cop's gun, started punching the cop in the face, and charged the police officer. That is why he was shot.
This isn't a competition. Sadly, police violence is a problem in many communities, but bringing up other victims to discredit the Black Lives Matter movement is pretty disingenuous. If you really believe that police violence is a problem, you should support Black Lives Matter as well as other organizations fighting for victims and their families. I know these conversations are hard, but they're necessary if we want to move forward.
Funny, because Black Lives Matter just seems to want to move backwards when it comes to race relations.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Decoded.
Whatever happened to music, television,